Hey guys, I'm going to be doing a patch 10.21 preview. It actually comes out in like 6 hours, 6 hours. So it'll be October 14th at around 7 a.m. EST. But just looking at the overview real quick, I think that it's gonna step the game in a good direction. They're buffing a lot of the early game stuff or the lesser used items, and they're nerfing some of the forecast carries. But I'll get into that soon. They're adjusting Lily and Zillion, which are probably two of the weaker legendaries, and they're changing Hunter and Fortune, but we'll talk about that. I'll just go one by one. The biggest change of the patch is going to be the shop change. So for those of you guys who don't know, in set 4, what they did was, let's say your shop has a Nami, and if you don't buy the Nami, your next shop cannot have Nami. So like it makes a difference when there's strong openers such as Cultist, and the only units you really want to see early game, let's say you find a Pike, and you really need to find TF or Elise for an insane power spike, you would just straight up ignore all of the one costs that aren't Elise or TF, and then just maximize the chances of finding it in your next shop. And they're removing that, which means that early game you're going to be holding more units, which is good because it makes transitions and stronger board more flexible. But the one thing is that later into the game, when you are rolling down, a lot of times you might miss when in the previous patch you wouldn't have. So I think it really does favor people that can play a flexible mid game. And not only that, but it also another upside is that there's going to be a lot less 3-star forecasts. I don't know if you guys like that or not. Like, sure, if you hit it yourself, it's fine. But it's like, it doesn't feel good fighting like a Riven 3, Talon 3, Morgana 3, one of those guys at like 5-1. And that's what the shop change was doing. I do wish that they reverted the level 8 forecast change. I think it went from 25% to 20% last patch. But either way, more flexible early game, more flexible mid game, and reduction of 3-star forecasts on later games. Which I think is good for the game, but we'll see. I'm not entirely sure yet. Oh, and now they made it so you are guaranteed 1 chosen by 2/2. So prior to this patch, it was 3 guaranteed chosens by each stage, but now it's just you're guaranteed to see at least 1 by 2/2. Because before, the worst case scenario was 2/5, 2/6, 2/7. But anyway, going into the balance for the traits, Adept is getting slightly buffed. 3 Adept actually sounds really good. So for example, in Light and Talon, when you're running Shen, Aurelia, and Yone, I actually think 4 seconds is really it used to be 3-5-9 or some ridiculous 3-5-10 or something, but 4 seconds from 3 is actually a really big buff. I wouldn't be surprised if Talon sees a lot more play. Hunter, they're nerfing the Hunter to 150% at 2, so you can't just run Ashe Warwick anymore, or you can, but it's a little bit weaker, which is fair. I think Ashe was a little bit too strong. But one thing now is I think Chosen Kindred is actually something that you can play your comp around. They're buffing the percentages by a good amount, but like you shouldn't only look at the percentages because the percentages go up, but what's not shown on the patch notes is the amount of seconds per proc goes down. So I think on 2 Hunter right now it's 3.5, and then it's 3, and then it's 2.5, and then it's like 2.25 or 2 or something. But all you need to know is that it scales down while the damage scales up. So it's actually like pretty meaningful, especially because the Hunter proc almost always just instantly kills a unit. So it's actually really good. Moonlight 5, I'm not sure how this changes the game. Maybe there's going to be some like reroll comps, but it's weird because you basically have to stack 2 units, but I can definitely see this. A lot of times, though, I feel like you're going to be stuck on Silas, or you're just going to bait yourself, but we'll see. Mystic, much needed change. Mystic, last patch, was kind of a joke. Like, unless everything was upgraded, I wouldn't even bother going for Mystic, unless it's like cast 2 Zillion, but that's like the only way. Or it's like cast plus Yumi. But like it wasn't like a trait that you would run unless you're playing Ahri or Dusk. So I think that this was a fair change. Okay, so the ninja buff, it's actually pretty big. 150 AD, 150 AP from 120, which is actually pretty meaningful, especially for a unit such as a Kali to carry. I still think it's going to be inconsistent. I think that the late game cap is going to be a little bit stronger, but it's really inconsistent. You're still going to need like a Kali 3 to win the game. The shade buff is really big. Before it would stealth after 2 autos, but now it's going to stealth after 3 autos because they changed the trait to 4 autos. But in order to balance it out a little bit, they increased the damage, but the aggro toggle was the reason shade was good. It wasn't more so the damage. Like, the damage is nice mid game, especially when you have chosen Zed and you can fit in the 3 shade like super early on. But the reason it was strong is because you were stacking Zed with attack speed and you can just toggle aggro, and a lot of times your Zed is just kind of untargetable. Vanguard 8, I don't think it really matters. Yeah, I just don't think it really matters. Cultist, this is going to be a weird change. Wow, this is actually a pretty big patch. But this is Basically, they're scaling it down. So it's 1600 to 1K, 3.8 to 1.7, and 6.6 to 2.5. But how it works is each star level increases it by 12%. So the easiest one is probably the 1K. So I'll just use the 1K example. So the old one, if you had at least one TF1 Pike 1, it would be at 1600 with 125. But if you do 36%, so now it's only going to be at 1360 HP. And then the AD is going to be 36% of 80. Which is definitely lower than 25 because it has to be like greater than like 50 to outscale. But anyway, so the early game cultist is definitely nerfed, but I think they're trying to make it so late game cultist is a little bit stronger. So maybe there's gonna be some like reroll cultist BS, but like we'll see. I don't know how this impacts late game, or I'm pretty sure it does not impact late game. And cultist is a lot weaker early game. I just think they're trying to make it so maybe if you like see infinite like Elises, infinitely TFs, you can actually go for like a cultist reroll. I don't know, whatever. Divine, good change. Before, how Divine worked was no matter how many divines you have, I don't know who designed this, but no matter how many divines you have, you only get 20% damage reduction regardless of how many divines you were running. But the thing that was scaling was the amount of damage. So it was 20% damage to 40% to 65 to 100, I think, at 2, 4, 6, 8. But now how it works is when you drop below 50% or you attack 6 times, which is the old divine, it removes all CC, so it's just like a QSS real quick. And then they take 50% reduced damage instead of 20, and then they do 50% bonus. But then what scales now is the amount of time. So before 2 divine was actually pretty good because it would last the entire combat. So this is like a slight nerf to like Donkey Kong. But I can definitely see 4 and 6 divine being somewhat playable, especially because a lot of the divines are good. Fortune definitely needed a tune down for 3. They're just lowering the amount of gold that you can get from the Fortune 3 loot streaks, which is fair. It's not noted that they're removing the 2 lost streak TG. So 3 Fortune is still beyond broken. You get way too much gold value. You can get a Thieves Gloves from a 2 loss streak, which is kind of ridiculous. They made it so 4 loss you can't find the cane on Krogs anymore, which is good. And they are buffing Fortune 6, but don't really read this and just be like, all right, bet I found Fortune Kench, time to go 6 Fortune, because it's not actually good. You're running too many garbage units and you're gonna get outscaled unless you hit it on like 3-1 or 3-2. 6 Fortune is always a bait. Okay, so they're nerfing down Diana 4. I'm not sure why. I think it was actually pretty balanced right now, but maybe it's because of the 5 Moonlight change. The Elise, they're just buffing Elise 3. It's not worth talking about. The Nidalee, this really increases her early game potential. So last patch, I think they buffed Vayne to 0.8 to 0.9 attack speed, and I was running a little bit of Vayne and it actually felt kind of good. But this hex changes a lot because a lot of times Nidalee can kill a unit. It's basically the Ziggs of set 3 if you guys played set 3. It can guarantee killing a unit. It's a pretty strong board, especially when you pair it with Sharpshooter. The extra damage is actually meaningful. And then, okay, APHELIOS is dead. APHELIOS was actually in a pretty good spot. Like it was pretty balanced. Like you could lose, you could win. It was pretty balanced. But after taking away the GA, I think if they took this change and then reverted the mana buffs or the mana nerfs, I think APHELIOS would be in a good spot. But even more said it's kind of just like they're gonna figure out how to balance APHELIOS later. APHELIOS right now is going to be the biggest joke of a unit. Jarvan, they're buffing Jarvan 3, which is kind of fair, I think. I think Jarvan 3 is going to be strong, but I don't know if there's going to be many reroll comps around it. I think if you find a lot of Nidalee's early game and a lot of Jarvan's early game, you can probably play a Warlord reroll. I'd be down for that. Slight Jax nerfs, which is fine. I think Jax is a little bit overperforming. The Teemo buffs are actually pretty big. They're increasing the damage of Teemo by 50%, which is like, that's kind of crazy. But either way, I think the only way you go Teemo carry is if you find Chosen Teemo, because the mana goes from 60 to 45. Kennen, they're just slightly buffing Kennen 3, which is fair. I think Ninja Kennen 3 is going to be really strong. Veigar, I don't know why they're nerfing it. I think Veigar 2 is a joke. And Veigar 3, like this comp already sucked. I think people have been complaining about Veigar because when you do hit Veigar 3, which is not often, it does feel pretty overwhelming. That's like, it's like hitting a Kali 3. It's like you're playing your comp around, you need 3 tier items, you need to hit Veigar 3 to even contest winning the game. So it's, if anything, they should just be touching 6 or 9 Elderwood. But anyway, Ahri, they're nerfing slightly the health and slightly the damage, but I think it's alright because a lot of times you're running GA already anyway, so you can corner her with Yuumi. Jhin, good change. The 400, like Jhin 3 was by far the most broken thing I've ever played. It's They're making the fourth shot go to 1, 2, 3, 4% instead of 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, which is fair. The fourth shot is almost always going to one shot regardless, especially with the base AD of Jhin. Like through like a Sejuani 3 with Bramble with 6 Vanguard, it probably still one shots it. But what the change does is when you're running sharpshooter, it doesn't just one shot your whole team anymore. Which is much needed, because before, if you had Jhin 3, you can throw in Vayne 1, Nidalee 1, all the sharpshooters at level 1, and you would just win out because Jhin 4 shot would just one shot half their board. They're slightly nerfing Riven 3. I'm not entirely sure why. I think Riven 3 was easy to deal with, or it was you were able to deal with it, but they're also toning down the amount of 3 stars you see. So even though it's really strong, the amount of times you see it is going to be really uncommon. So I think these changes are just like whatever. It's not worth really thinking about because of the shop change. Azir, they're just buffing Azir 3. It doesn't really matter. Azir's still good, really good, like pseudo frontline. Kayn, they are slightly nerfing Kayn 1, and they are also nerfing Kayn's blue transformation from 75 to 50%, which is really, thank you. Like, Kayn 1 with blue transformation right now was doing way too much damage. It could actually just one-shot your entire backline in one cast. But we'll talk about one of the bug fixes, so it's not as overwhelming as you think. Kayn 2 is still going to be really strong. I still think blue Kayn is still going to be good when you are going for a win streak. Or not win streak, when you have a mana item. Sorry, I don't know why I said that. But anyway, Lilia, they're making it so weaker on Lilia 1, but stronger on Lilia 2, which is fair. I think a lot of times you're splashing Lilia with mages, and then I can see 3.5 seconds with double cast is a little strong. Zilean, they're buffing Zilean 2, so because before it doesn't matter if it's Zilean 1 or Zilean 2, but now Zilean 2 is actually worth going for. Yeah, and they're just toning down some of the healing because you're getting an extra target. But anyway, the items, which is the biggest change, they're buffing a lot of the weaker items. So the Ice Cream Cone, which is tier Negatron, which gives your team, it's Zeke's, but for AP, 30 to 40, which is actually not bad. I don't know if I would slam it, but we'll see. Gargoyles, I still think this item is really underwhelming for an item. You're only getting like an extra like 20 armor and MR, and it's not that valuable. Like even if you're solo frontlining Sejuani, I don't even catch it doing anything, which is, yeah. But Locket, wow, this is a really long patch. What the hell? Anyway, Locket, they're buffing Locket Shield by 100 on level 1s or on 1 stars, and they're buffing it by 200 or 150 on 2 stars, which is pretty like big. Especially early game. I wouldn't even mind going Rod or Chain Opener and just hard stacking Lockets. Ludens and Shiv, they're just buffing the amount of damage. They're nerfing the base damage, but they're buffing the amount of extra damage when the targets are CC'd. I wouldn't read too much into it. I wouldn't say it's a meta though. The one thing that I would say would be that Teemo with Ludens might actually be pretty good because his scaling is actually good now. So that's that. And then Zeke's is the same buff as Ice Cream Cone. It's 30% to 40%, which is fair. It's the early game was really bad. Zizura taunting for the first 2 seconds and also having an extra 60 AD, which is really good because belts are so bad, and I am so thankful that they're buffing belt items. Belt items have been really bad, and then also bow. When you're playing a comp that doesn't really use too many bows, you can use like 1 bow for a GS, but then after that, like extra bows are just like making suboptimal items. So being able to slam Zizura, especially getting rid of a belt, is going to be really valuable. Bugs, they're facing a typo. It doesn't matter. Okay, so this one's actually pretty big. You know, like in Sins, when Pyke ults like a cornered unit, it doesn't stun the corner unit, but now it will. And it's actually pretty nice. The thing is, they're nerfing cultists, so it's pretty, it'll like keep it in check. The chosen bug is gone. Oh, Kayn no longer casted. There's no enemies in range. So let's say he gets hit by something, but then there's nothing near him. He won't just waste his ult anymore. He'll actually walk up and then ult accordingly. So it is a slight Kayn buff, but they are nerfing his numbers by a lot, so it shouldn't be too bad. I still think Kayn is overall nerfed. Set can no longer cast. It's just a bug fix, and they were fixing some bugs with Fortune. But that's all. This patch is actually really big. So my prediction would be, I think I talked about a lot of predictions throughout the video, but I think it's going to be generally the same comps. There's going to be the weaker comps that were like, so like right now I think it's Elder, Ashe, and Dusk were S tier, and I still think they're going to be really strong, but they're toning up some of the comps that weren't S tier. So like Talon can see more play, Sharpshooters can see more play, different itemizations can be good, your early game is going to be better because of the shop change. So I really am looking forward to this patch. This patch is going to be probably, I'm just going to guess it's my favorite patch. It seems like it's almost like a mid-season update. Like they're adding a lot of they're buffing a lot of items, they're buffing a lot of early units, and nerfing some of the later units, and everything is just going to be buffed up to close to the same par. But yep, that is my patch rundown.